Hi guys, I want to read to you some of the book we started reading before I started reading the Bible. It mentions the book of Matthew 8, about the lepers that Jesus was healing in the people, because I haven't read to you any of the miracles that he performed. So in the book called It's Not What You Think by Jefferson Think, we're on page 136. And this is the book. It was a New York Times bestseller. You can probably find it on Amazon. Now, it says a kingdom is any place ruled by a king. It's a space of ruling, reigning, and governmental authority. Jesus is saying that God's kingdom, the place where God reigns and rules, has now crash landed in himself. He is the God of Israel, visiting his people. This is my coffee. Do you want me to make you some coffee? Why do you come and take my coffee like that? It's not even sweet. That's ridiculous. I can't even have a cup of coffee. Okay, I'm sorry about that, guy. He is the God of Israel, visiting his people and fulfilling the promise to establish his reign and rule in their midst. Growing up, I always thought our hope was that we would get evacuated, that one day I would get snatched up into the sky and leave this nasty and evil earth. But from the very first sentence, God seems to be about restoration. I believe I did read this part to you, but I'm going to just keep reading. He doesn't want us to leave. He wants to come here himself. That God's reign and rule would be established in our finances. It would be established in academics, sexuality, and in jobs. The God that dwells with us. One of my favorite movies is Thor. Thor is a god from another planet with immense strength and huge battle hammer. In both Thor movies, there is this move that Thor always does when he's fighting someone. He would jump up in the air, lift his hammer, and then come crashing down to the ground with the head of the hammer. Because of the weight and force, a crater is formed in the ground, and then there is the immense ripple force that basically knocks out everything in its path. I like to think the kingdom is like that. A lot of times we think the kingdom is something highly spiritual or fluffy, but it has a weight and a force to it, even if it was peaceful. Jesus' grace, mercy, and love were heavy, and when he unleashed them through his death and resurrection, there was a ripple. It was God himself saying, I'm now in charge. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed my cup of coffee. Sorry, guys. It was God himself saying, I'm now in charge, and my reign is being ushered in. Anyone in his path couldn't help but get hit by the power of love, grace, and healing. There is power in the kingdom. One peculiar story in Matthew 8 describes a leper who comes and kneels before Jesus and says, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. In the Old Testament, leprosy was a ferocious skin disease that left anyone with it deeply marginalized. They were an outcast. Most people thought they must have done something wrong or God was upset at them for them to get sick. Sadly, the church hasn't been too good at letting the inclusive kingdom call ring true. I've been to churches in Europe where there were little 1-inch slits on the outside of the building where the lower class or marginalized or unclean people could watch the service without coming in and infecting everyone else. But what's crazy about the story in Matthew 8 is that Jesus reaches out and touches the man. This man was a leper. Any Jew would have known that touch would have made himself ceremonially unclean, according to the priests. But this rabbi reaches out and touches him. And in a split second, the cleanest person in the world and in all history chooses to collide with someone who is unclean. And guess what? Jesus wins. It says upon Jesus' touch, immediately his leprosy was cleansed. This was scandalous because up until that time, uncleanness always won. For the first time, the clean infects the unclean. There's a force, an energy, a holiness about Jesus that emanates off of him and into anyone who touches him. That is the kingdom. There's power being unleashed, and God's reign is breaking forth in the midst of the old creation. The good news of the Bible is that when you step into God's kingdom and under his authority, everything changes. Sometimes people think Christianity is a take it or leave it option, meaning we can accept Jesus or not, but the choice doesn't really change. When you understand the power of the statement, Jesus is Lord, you realize that how we respond to that kingdom call is of the greatest importance. And then, as kingdom people, wherever we go, the power of the kingdom goes with us. Who is our king? Are we bowing to something else? Imagine it's the first century and you're living in a state that's about to be colonized by Rome. As usual, the emperor would send a herald of some sort who would come with the scroll in hand to shout to the town that under decree of Caesar, it is now announced that he is in charge of your town. He is the new governmental authority. Now, what it probably didn't look like was the herald coming and saying, all right, everyone, Caesar is the new Lord, but honestly, you don't have to really reconstruct your life around that truth. It's a take it or leave it type of thing. So what if the person was coming to say that? If you want to make Caesar your Lord, maybe come back next week for an informational meeting and we'll tell you how to do it. We know that's laughable because that's not what kings do. Caesar was Lord regardless of how the colony acted. Either they stepped into that truth or they were rebels. The declaration of Jesus is basically the same as Caesar's, but even better. Since it's the real thing, Jesus as Lord is the best news in the world. And we can step into the truth or become rebels. Except instead of killing us, if we don't obey, we don't realize we are rebelling against the ability to know true love. This Jesus who died for his enemies and inaugurated his new world is the resurrection, is love. That's what 1 John says about God. He is love. That means we are rebels if we say no, but saying no is saying no to love, to what it means to be human, to flourish, and to all beauty and grace and forgiveness that makes the kingdom of God. We are like striving people saying no to bread simply because we don't want to receive a handout. But if we say yes to the beautiful call that the kingdom is near, our journey begins. The minute we say yes to Jesus as King, our kingdom collides with his kingdom. During college, I'd often stay up at least 3 in the morning and go to class dead tired and then catch up on sleep in the middle of the day. I kept my dorm pretty orderly, but not necessarily cleaning. Meaning I like everything to be in its right place, but I'm not too concerned about everything being deep cleaned too often. College was a time of doing things how I liked it, doing things my way and organizing my life around my rhythms and patterns. It almost sounds like my home life, right? All that changed when Alyssa and I got married. When we stood at the altar, we were colliding our kingdoms, our domains, the way we govern ourselves. Now had to be reconstructed and reordered. We had to start over. We had to reorient and reorbit around our identity as a married couple. The problem, though, is it's not that easy. In fact, you realize how much of your own kingdom you have once you get married. You think you're not selfish. You think you're not impatient. You think you're not flexible. I did until I got married. If you're not married yet, by the way, just wait until the second day of your marriage when you argue about where the trash can go, which way the toilet paper rolls, among many other household things. Alyssa and I were learning a new way of life. Being legally married wasn't the goal. That's the title. True marriage is two lives meshing and colliding until piece by piece, the moment by moment, we continually are becoming one new person. A lot of Christians, though, settle for only the title. When we enter into a relationship with Jesus, we become Christians. We receive the title and identity in the same way. When I entered into a relationship with Alyssa, I became married. It didn't take long to realize just how selfish I was, just how hurtful I could be with snarky comments, and just how unfocused I could be as a leader and servant. It's only when we clash with another kingdom or a new way of life, of living, that we realize how poor the one before truly was. For example, one of the things Alyssa quickly exposed is the fact that I can sometimes be argumentative, but Alyssa has gently reminded and showed me that there is more joy in life, operates better when I purposefully take a listening posture. It was only when her sweetness, kindness, and all around gentleness exposed me that I saw that if I had thought getting married was the end of the road, not the beginning, I never would have cared to make those changes in my life. Many of us think that when we start following Jesus, that's the end. We want the wedding, but we don't want the marriage. That's true. A lot of people want to get to the point where he comes rescue you from mayhem, but you don't want to spend the time to let your life collide with his life. Okay, the next page says, when in fact, saying yes to Jesus is the beginning. Saying yes to Jesus is the beginning. You can put some in this bowl here. I'm sorry, guys. Just as we do in marriage, we are in reorienting, and come under God's reign and rule and his way of doing things. Life isn't about going to heaven when you die. It's about making heaven true on earth in every fact and level of our relationship with God, others, and self. The Christian life is asking, how can I make what's true of Jesus and his gospel true in whatever aspect of my life? For something to be a kingdom, there must be a king, kingdom citizens, and a governing structure or way of life. A lot of us have the first two, not realizing the last one comes with it. We take Jesus as our Savior. We become citizens of his kingdom, but we fail to realize that for that to be true, our lives now have to come under his reign. We actually have to listen and come under his reign. The people of Israel had this. God was king. The Israelites were citizens. The law was the way of life. Then it shouldn't be lost on us that that was exactly what Matthew was trying to say about the Sermon on the Mount. In it, Jesus absorbed the law into himself and then put a radical spin on it that is now the new way of living and being human. It was Law and Moses 2.0. Jesus not only goes up on a hill similar to Moses going up on the mountain, but then begins the first of 5 extremely large chunks of teaching by Jesus, the entire book of Matthew. And reading the book of Matthew, it's apparent that the 5 huge chunks of teaching is an allusion to Israel's first 5 books of the Bible. It really is. It's so similar. And he's not abolishing the old Torah. He's fulfilling it and reshaping it and bringing it deeper. He exclusively saying that those who trust in Jesus are the new Israel, the new children of Abraham. And Jesus' teachings are the governing authority or structure that should define the people as kingdom citizens. I remember spending some time in Uganda a few years ago and being immediately struck with how quickly I stood out. Of course, my skin color was a huge part of this, but so was my way of life. For example, we'd have church service with local workers and staff of an orphanage where we were staying, and it was quite apparent who was a local and who was a Mazunga, a white person usually from America, by who danced and who didn't in the worship. You know, they clap, dance, and shout, and we in the West are quite reserved. But I stand out in other Western countries too. Alyssa and I were in Europe a few years ago, and I remember sitting at a dinner table, waiting for our check for an incredible length of time. I thought the restaurant had horrible service, and I was contemplating tipping poorly when we were informed that in Europe it's rude for the server to bring the check before asks for it. It was clear from how we were behaving that we were American. And there were markers or things that made us stand out. Our culture and citizenship made us look different from the native people. That's what it means to be in the kingdom, to put our whole lives under God's reign and live as new humanity, a community that points to the future of the restoration of all things. We are those things that make us stand out. What is our character? What do we need to change to become full citizens of God's kingdom? And then his next section says, the last shall be first. I'm already at 17 minutes. And he tells another story about the last shall be first. He's talking about the foot washing, how he became servant to his disciples and he was washing their feet and everything. Guys, I'm going to take a break right here and we'll read some more when I come back, okay? Let's finish up. Let's see here, the sword or the cross. We'll finish up a little bit of reading of this book, and then tomorrow I'll start back reading some more of the Bible. All right, take a break.